Today, something impossible has happened in the vast silence of space. I've spent 43 years decoding the language of the cosmos, gravitational waves, quantum fluctuations, the hidden structure of space-time itself, and I thought I had seen everything the universe could throw at us, until now. 11 hours ago, an object far beyond the edge of our solar system, designated 3IATLAS, split in two. Not shattered, not fragmented, but divided with surgical perfection. One half vanished, the other began transmitting signals directly toward Earth. No explosion, no debris field, no dust plume trailing into the void, just a flawless line of separation, as if carved by an intelligence that understands geometry more precisely than we ever will. At first, NASA dismissed it as a data artifact, a calibration error in deep space imaging arrays. But confirmations came flooding in from Chile, from Hawaii, from the European ECNIS network. Every telescope saw the same thing. 3IATLAS had divided cleanly in half, then half of it simply ceased to exist. Not moved, not hidden behind planetary shadow, not dissolved into solar radiation, erased, gone. Deep space scanners failed to find even gravitational residue, and that's what terrifies us most. The universe doesn't erase its mistakes. Something or someone made this happen. Think about it. We can track an object the size of a basketball from 1,000 kilometers away. We can see galaxies being born 13 billion light years from here, yet we've just lost an object the size of a mountain. It's as if reality itself tore along a line no physics can explain. The laws of mechanics, inertia, conservation, all of them failed at once. This wasn't random. It was deliberate, controlled, executed with intent. 48 hours before the split, 3IATLAS was following a perfectly stable trajectory. Every law of celestial motion obeyed. International observatories tracked its path with millisecond precision. There were no anomalies, no perturbations, no gravitational disruptions. Everything was calm until it wasn't. Without warning, the object began to accelerate. No thermal signatures, no ion trails, no evidence of outgassing or reactive propulsion. The acceleration grew exponentially, precise to 9 decimal places. Nature doesn't write equations that perfect. We simulated every scenario. Gravitational pull from Jupiter, no. Solar wind, no. Magnetic interference, none. Even the absurd hypothesis of internal gas leaks couldn't produce this kind of vector shift. There was no physical mechanism we know of that could push a celestial body faster the farther it moved from the sun. Unless, of course, it wasn't a celestial body at all. 36 hours before the split, 3IATLAS began emitting rhythmic energy pulses, not chaotic flares, not background radiation, but a steady, repeating sequence every 11 minutes to the nanosecond. No neutron star, no pulsar, not even an engineered atomic clock could sustain that kind of precision indefinitely. These weren't natural pulses, they were messages or commands. I remember the first night the signal appeared. I was in the control room in Pasadena. The graphs rolled in, a perfect waveform, unwavering in amplitude and frequency. At first we laughed, thinking it was interference. Then the second pulse hit, exactly 11 minutes later. Then a third, then a fourth. Within hours, more than a dozen observatories had confirmed the pattern, 11 minutes, always. The pulse sequence had mathematical symmetry. When converted into frequency ratios, the intervals corresponded to prime numbers, 2, 3, 5, 7, 11. It wasn't random noise, it was deliberate design. Someone, somewhere, was counting. We compared the waveform against human-made transmissions, Voyager's golden record, the Arecibo message, and the resemblance was unnerving. Same logical structuring, same modulation depth. At that moment, two camps formed across the global network. One believed we were witnessing a previously unknown cosmic reaction, a deep core energy process within the object itself. The other, composed of quantum energy specialists and remote sensing theorists, said something that froze the room. That kind of precision only happens under intelligent control. 18 hours before the split, things turned stranger. 3IATLAS began to change shape. Slowly at first, a subtle distortion in the light signature, a faint stretching of its spectral contour. Within 2 hours, the transformation was undeniable. The once spherical body elongated into a cylinder, smooth and symmetrical, as though reconfiguring itself. No heat emission, no cracking stress patterns, no particle dispersion. A solid mass of ice and rock doesn't reshape without tearing itself apart, but 3IATLAS did, seamlessly. I stared at the telemetry, the cascading numbers, the clean geometry of it all, and realized we were watching an engineering process, something being prepared. For what, we couldn't tell. Then, without warning, the 11-minute heartbeat stopped. All emissions ceased. Total silence. It was as if the object had powered down, waiting. For the next several hours, nothing. The instruments hummed with emptiness. Every network feed went still. The quiet felt alive, heavy, anticipatory. We didn't know it then, but that silence was the countdown. Exactly 11 hours later, 3IATLAS did the unthinkable. It split. No explosion, no fragmentation, no residue. Just a clean, straight incision, separating two identical halves. Object A and Object B. Both drifted apart, balanced perfectly, trajectories mirror smooth. For a few moments, the data remained stable. Then Object B changed course. 90 degrees off its predicted path. No deceleration, no reaction mass, no physics. It just turned and accelerated beyond every recorded limit, then vanished. 1 second, it was there, visible in optical, infrared, and radio bands. The next, nothing, gone from every monitoring array on Earth. NASA's deep space grid lost track. The European network confirmed. Military satellites detected no residual radiation, no gravitational echo, not even a trace of photon scatter. Imagine an object several kilometers wide simply deleted from existence. No law of nature allows that. After that moment, fear crept into every command center. Equations meant nothing. Arguments gave way to whispers. Some said Object B hadn't disappeared. It had cloaked itself, bending light like a miniature black hole, folding gravity, or even stepping into a parallel dimension. Fantasies, yes, but the data were merciless. Flat lines, cold graphs, a void sharper than any noise floor. And yet if Object B could hide from every instrument we have, optical, radio, gravitational, then maybe it was still out there, quiet, invisible, watching. 4 hours after the separation, the first anomaly came not from the missing half, but from the one that remained. A faint hum, barely above cosmic background. Engineers dismissed it as atmospheric noise, but after filtering, the truth surfaced. It wasn't noise, it was structure. Rising and falling tones arranged in perfect mathematical intervals, prime sequences, the very language we once used to speak to the stars through Voyager's golden record. Only this time, the message wasn't from us. For 31 flawless minutes, the transmission continued. No drift, no fluctuation, a signal so pure it pierced the universe like glass. Every major array, La Silla, Mauna Kea, Madrid, New Norcia, received it. And yet only the antennas aimed precisely at 3IATLAS could decode it. Nothing else in the sky echoed that pattern. The direction of the signal should have gone outward, into the darkness. Instead, it converged inward, toward the coordinates where Object B had vanished. Every timing marker, every angle of arrival, every phase delay pointed to the same destination. It wasn't broadcasting, it was calling. Then came the response. A brief harmonic flare in the spectrum, a flicker-like acknowledgement, a ping, then silence again. The systems displayed it plainly. 2 transmissions, handshake complete. Receiving ready, someone whispered. And in that whisper, I felt the air leave the room. If it can disappear at will, it can choose when to be seen. And if it can choose visibility, it can choose its audience. The signal persisted, patient, deliberate, unbroken. Prime numbers again. 1, 2, 3, 5, 7, not nature. Intelligence. Commands sent into emptiness that no longer felt empty. For the first time in decades, our science felt small, not as an observer, but as a participant in something larger, A machine starting up, checking systems, communication, navigation, synchronization, and each checklist mark ran through us, through our antennas, through our fear. That was when I realized the most chilling truth of all. We weren't watching a discovery. We were being included in a procedure. 2 hours after the signal exchange, the deep space gravity scanners in Hawaii picked up a tremor, not seismic, but cosmic. A subtle distortion in the local field, faint yet unmistakable. The coordinates placed it nearly 2 astronomical units closer to Earth than where object B had last been seen. It hadn't vanished. It had moved. It was coming closer. At first, the trajectory looked benign, a simple arc through the outer belt, perhaps just a passing flyby. But then the calculations shifted. The velocity wasn't decaying, it was climbing. Every minute, the acceleration doubled, yet no exhaust, no ion discharge, no sign of propulsion. Each adjustment of orbit was too precise to be random. Every movement aligned perfectly with the equations of orbital mechanics, like a pilot reading a manual written by the universe itself. The global command channels fell silent. In the encrypted loops, the tone changed. The phrase "natural phenomenon" disappeared from every log. Later leaks confirmed it. The orbit bore clear traces of active control from a source no one could identify. When the James Webb Array locked its sensitive optics on the target, every engineer froze. Instead of a rocky surface, they saw a smooth, seamless skin, reflective like liquid metal, flawless and symmetrical. No craters, no debris, not even cosmic dust clinging to its hull. The spectral data showed no known element, nothing native to our solar system, a mirror built from something beyond the periodic table. Then came the impossible deceleration. As object B approached the outer orbit of Jupiter, its speed began to drop, perfectly smoothly, without thrust. No reaction jets, no heat signatures. It just slowed down as if space itself were obeying its command. Even with all our physics, there is no equation that allows frictionless braking in a vacuum. Whatever was steering it possessed mastery over forces we only theorize about. At that point, every public feed from NASA, ESA, and CNSA went dark. Officially, systems were under maintenance. Behind the blackout, we received one final encrypted transmission. Object B maintaining position, awaiting instructions, no signature, no verification code, just that message, and a final string of characters no one has decoded to this day. What chilled me most wasn't the encryption, it was the repetition. Awaiting instructions. 3 times, identical down to the last bit. For 6 hours, Object B hung motionless near Jupiter's orbit. No light, no energy emissions. A silence so pure it bent the nerves of everyone listening. The entire solar system felt like it was holding its breath. Then, exactly at 300 hours UTC, the silence shattered. Every major radio telescope, from the Atacama Array to the New Mexico Interferometer, caught the same eruption, a perfectly phased electromagnetic surge, a wavefront synchronized across multiple frequencies. It wasn't noise, it was orchestration, gamma bursts, X-rays, radio bands, all rising and falling in unison. At first glance, it resembled cosmic static until spectrum analysis stripped away the chaos. Beneath it, hidden in the harmonic layers, was order, fractal symmetry, recursive geometry repeating itself through every band, patterns that looked like circuitry blueprints or schematics, or maybe instructions. I watched as the data unfolded on the monitors. It was like witnessing a machine write its own code through the language of energy. Step by step, the realization spread. These weren't random emissions. They were directives, commands. And what terrified us most was the direction they pointed. The signals weren't radiating outward into deep space. They were converging inward, toward Earth. Within minutes of the first transmission burst, multiple satellites went dark. Systems designed to survive solar storms, nuclear bursts, even EMP attacks. Gone, silent, lifeless. At first, the military flagged it as solar interference, an unpredicted radiation spike. But the timestamps told a darker truth. Each blackout coincided precisely with the moment of impact from Object B's pulse. Something was activating, not out there, but here. NASA locked every frequency, shut down data pipelines, rerouted deep space channels to jammers, but you can't erase the sky. Independent astronomers still listening on private arrays caught what government feeds couldn't hide. They saw it. The moment history cracked open. While Object B unleashed its storm of coded energy near Jupiter, the remaining half, Object A, came alive. Still beyond Mars's orbit, it began to glow, softly at first, then brighter, steady and rhythmic, like something pulsing beneath its surface. Not fire, not reflection, a heartbeat. The light throbbed in perfect synchrony with the pulses streaming from Object B, one sending, one receiving, two halves of one design awakening together. The glow deepened into color, golden hues mixed with shadows of violet. It wasn't flickering, it was breathing. Every wavelength corresponded to the same rhythm. 11 minutes between peaks. The heartbeat had returned. Only this time it wasn't a message, it was motion. Across 12 hours, everything changed. Both fragments began to move, not drifting, not coasting, but steering. Object A rotated slowly on its axis, a graceful turn so controlled it might have been piloted. Its movement wasn't random, but calculated, as though aligning with invisible coordinates. And when Object B, billions of kilometers away, mirrored every tilt, every micro-vibration, we knew they were linked. The synchronization was exact, down to the millisecond. Two colossal bodies, separated by half the solar system, were moving as one. Astronomers projected their rotation vectors forward. When the trajectories intersected, the results left even the skeptics breathless. The axes of both objects converged, not at the Sun, not at any arbitrary point in space, but directly along Earth's orbital path. 21 hours from that moment, their alignment would pass through the very coordinates our planet occupies. Coincidence? No one dared use the word. The chatter among research channels called it something else. Instrumental assembly. Two keys tuning a single frequency. Two mirrors adjusting to focus one beam. Inside the control rooms, tension became gravity itself. Everyone whispered the same unspoken question. What happens when they meet? When two halves of an impossible machine reconnect not in the emptiness of space, but in proximity to us. That question was still echoing when the first leaks surfaced. Screenshots, snippets from internal ISA communications, fragments of terrified emails. They spoke of energy signatures spreading between the two objects, a magnetic filament stretching across hundreds of millions of kilometers like an invisible bridge, a loop, a circuit, a generator of planetary scale. The reports described harmonics identical to early particle accelerator experiments, only amplified to impossible magnitudes. The implication was staggering. The two halves weren't just reuniting, they were building something. Then the planet itself responded. Sensitive magnetometers across the world recorded subtle fluctuations. Compass needles drifted by fractions of a degree. GPS accuracy faltered. Birds in mid-migration veered off course as though an unseen current rewired their instinct. The change was microscopic but undeniable, a tremor not in rock but in the magnetic skeleton of the Earth. I remember standing at the observatory window, watching the stars tremble through heatless air. For the first time, I felt that we weren't merely observing the universe, it was observing us back. Something vast and deliberate had reached out and brushed against our world. Now, as Object A and Object B continue to close their alignment, a countdown has begun, though none of us can read its clock. What happens when the two halves meet within our orbit? Will it be a message, a catastrophe, or the awakening of something that has been waiting here all along? No one dares to predict. The only certainty is that the silence after the next pulse will not last forever. The night before alignment, every screen in every control room across the planet glowed with the same pale blue data stream. Even those who didn't understand the numbers could feel their meaning. Something was coming. Object A and Object B were no longer distant anomalies. They were instruments, two notes vibrating through the same chord, converging toward a point that just happened to be us. The countdown was no longer theoretical. 21 hours had become 3. At 0014 UTC, the signals between the two objects intensified, forming a steady lattice of electromagnetic pulses. The pattern wasn't noise anymore, it was structure, repeating with crystalline logic, prime number harmonics overlaid with complex modulations that no human encoder could replicate. Observatories in Chile, South Africa, and Australia triangulated the field. The bridge between A and B now spanned the inner solar system. The space between them shimmered faintly in spectral readings, a corridor of invisible current looping through our orbit. For the first time in history, the instruments of man were registering a phenomenon that seemed to exist halfway between physics and intention, and then the field touched us. It began softly, a whisper through the planet's magnetic shield. Satellite gyros jittered. Compasses spun a fraction of a degree. Every auroral band brightened in eerie synchrony. Ribbons of electric green and violet dancing across latitudes that had never seen them before. Northern lights appeared above the equator. Birds altered their flight mid-air. Ocean tides shifted ever so slightly against the pull of the moon. It was as though the planet was humming along to a frequency it had forgotten it knew. Inside the lab, I watched the telemetry screens blur from overload. Numbers froze mid-scroll. My hands trembled not from fear, but from the impossible beauty of it. Our world responding like a living antenna. The hum wasn't random static. It carried pulse intervals in ratios that mirrored human neural firing patterns. It was as if the field was listening and echoing back thought itself. NASA's emergency frequency burst alive with panicked voices. Ground interference rising, flux exceeding prediction, recalibrate grid. But the grid wouldn't obey. Every device that relied on electromagnetic calibration, phones, GPS, aircraft systems, flickered, then failed. Entire constellations of satellites drifted into safe mode. On the ground, power grids held for a moment longer, then dimmed. City lights across continents shimmered and fell into half-darkness. 0300 UTC, the sky changed. A halo appeared, not light, but the absence of it. A ring of darkness spanning the heavens, faintly rippling with internal motion. Within that ring, the stars themselves seemed to bend, as if viewed through a lens of living glass. Astronomers watching from the Andes described it as a window where space forgot to hide its machinery. In its center, two faint luminescent points glowed, Object A and Object B, now visible to the naked eye, approaching each other across the gulf of our orbit. The transmission resumed, stronger than before, every pulse echoing through every remaining receiver on Earth. The sequence no longer followed prime numbers. It formed Fibonacci ratios, spiraling patterns embedded in the geometry of life. We realized too late that the pattern wasn't external. It was aligning with us, with the electromagnetic rhythm of our own planet, even our own biology. The resonance crawled into our bloodstream, into the faint electrical hum of every beating heart. For a moment, everyone felt it, an impossible stillness, followed by the quiet certainty that something immense was listening. Then the two halves met. No collision, no explosion, no light, just contact, a silent joining, like two halves of a lock clicking into place. The instruments on Earth screamed and went blind. Every magnetic sensor flatlined. The planet's field reversed polarity for exactly 11 seconds. North became south. South became north. When vision returned, the sky was white. The ring was gone. The stars had vanished. Only a single glowing line remained where the two halves overlapped, extending through space like a vein of liquid silver. Every screen in the lab filled with static, then with symbols, fractals cascading into each other, forming words that no language could hold, yet every mind understood. I felt it before I read it. Initialization complete. And then silence. For 3 long minutes there was nothing. No signals, no interference, not even background cosmic radiation. The universe had gone quiet, like the pause between breaths. We thought it was over. We were wrong. At 3:14 UTC, a low tone emerged, not from the sky, but from within the Earth itself. Seismographs twitched. Deep radar arrays detected vibrations rising through the crust, synchronized with the orbiting structure. From beneath the oceans, old abandoned cables carried faint currents, pulsing at 11-minute intervals. Something was responding, not from space, but from below. Across the world, messages began to appear on unconnected systems. Observatory terminals, cell phones, obsolete satellites, all displaying the same three words, awaiting instructions. The phrase that had haunted our encrypted channels for days had found its way into every corner of human technology. I looked up at the night sky, or what was left of it. The silver thread connecting Object A and Object B had widened, shimmering softly, stretching from horizon to horizon. Its glow reflected off oceans, rivers, windows. No one could escape it. Some prayed, some screamed, others simply watched, breathless, as the universe rewrote its own silence. Then the thread fractured, breaking into thousands of smaller filaments that began descending toward Earth like strands of rain. They weren't fire, they weren't matter. They passed through clouds and buildings, through skin and stone, without harm, yet wherever they touched, electronics flared to life. Dark screens brightened. Dead satellites whispered faint telemetry. Power grids reignited themselves. It was as though the world had been rebooted. Through the static, a final transmission came in, weak but unmistakable. It carried no words, only a rhythm. 11 minutes between pulses, each one softer than the last. A farewell, a confirmation, or a countdown we hadn't yet learned to measure. The new structure, whatever it was, drifted beyond lunar orbit, its twin halves now one seamless body, glowing faintly like a distant lantern. Telescopes still track it, though no one officially acknowledges its existence anymore. The agencies have erased every log, every timestamp, every voice, but I remember the feeling when the world hummed with something not our own, when the sky turned white and the planet seemed to hold its breath. And I remember realizing, in the final moment before the signal faded, that the fear we felt wasn't theirs. It was ours. The fear of recognition. Because the message wasn't, "We are coming." It was, "We are already here." Now, when I close my eyes, I still feel that rhythm in the quiet between my heartbeats. The 11-minute echo of the 3IATLAS alignment. Maybe it's residual data. Maybe it's memory. Or maybe it's proof that humanity's call into the void has finally been answered. Whatever it was, it changed the sky and us with one truth we can no longer unhear. The universe has never been empty. It was only waiting for us to listen.